Good morning, everyone. Take a little bit of time to make sure that we don't have anybody that needs to be let in. We want to thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Raven Wells. I'll be your host for the first segment in our three-part series, which is called Pandemic State of Mind, Love in Lockdown. We definitely appreciate you all joining us this morning. With the coronavirus pandemic changing the way we live and creating unique day-to-day change, it's changing our lives. It's imperative to have discussions, like the one we're going to have today. Came about just from, a few of us sitting around talking about the challenges that we had been facing, which many have been facing, not only through the coronavirus pandemic, but, also in life, period, in general. So today we'll definitely have a discussion that's much needed. It's natural that our relationships may have come under the spotlight, especially since many have been quarantined. And countless couples have been working from home. Even the couples we generally classify as having healthy relationships may be going through some rough times. A rough patch right now for various reasons. They may be facing unemployment and financial instability as a result of COVID, while many others may be forced to work from home alongside their partners. In the interim, our usual opportunities for socializing, date nights, romantic getaways, and hobbies enjoyed outside of our homes, they've been limited. I don't know about you guys, but I've definitely been in the house for 2 years now. So there's no magic recipe for making relationships work today. We do have a panel comprised of knowledgeable professionals today that are going to discuss with us the challenges that many couples have faced during the pandemic and in life, and how we can maintain and continue to flourish in healthy relationships. So first and foremost, we're going to have Brother McLean, a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity and the Sphinx Educational Fund, chime in with us for a second. Brother McLean, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Raven.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's event, Pandemic State of Mind, Love in Lockdown. My name is Michael McLean. I am the Educational Fund Chair for the Sphinx Educational Fund. I am also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. I just want to give you a little breakdown on what the Sphinx Educational Fund is about and what we do. As you know, Arizona Men's Health is one of our programs under that umbrella, led by Dr. James and his committee of Raymond Sherrill and Winston Waller. But I wanted to let you also know some of the other programs and advocacies and initiatives that we have. Obviously, Go to High School, Go to College is a national program for the fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha. However, because of the grant processes and the things that we can do as a nonprofit, they fall under us as well. And so we basically focus on high school students and helping them walk through that administrative route to college, letting them know what's important and what they need to focus on for whatever major or career goals they may have in the future. We also have Project Alpha, which is a national program of the fraternity, but it also falls under our nonprofit program, whereby we do a lot of life skills and teaching them social media training, how to represent themselves as they become young adults. We obviously are working on our second year of HBC tours, whereby we take students to the HBCU tour in the South, Southeast to expose them to that, because we don't have those type of institutions on the West Coast. This year, I think in April or November, we will be doing an HBCU tour that will comprise of a week, whereby over 80 students will be traveling Southeast to visit various HBCUs and getting that great and awesome exposure. So I'm happy to see that. And we will continue to do that every year as our programs continue. Then second to last, we have our Thurgood Marshall College Fund Brunch. It's going to be virtual this year, October 30th, 2021, whereby we give high school student scholarships in the local community We also offer money to the National Thurgood Marshall College Fund because we continue to have a national partnership with them, as well as we identify community leaders in the local community and award them an award. And last but definitely not least is our Arizona Men's Health, the program that we're having today. That program started many years ago. We partnered with the Mayo Clinic to start advocating in the Black community for men's health, prostate cancer, and various other challenges that African Americans face, especially men. And what has happened now is we've expanded that program to address things that are happening right now. As of right now, we're dealing with COVID. And so I applaud the committee, Dr. James and his committee, for taking the time to research and prepare this event today as we continue to advocate in our communities. So again, thank you for being here. I'm excited about the program today and look forward to the many more programs that's coming down in the future.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And we definitely appreciate that information. If you guys have additional information or if you need additional information on the Spinks Educational Fund, you can also obtain that information from our website for Arizona Men's Health and Wellness Initiative. Moving forward at this time, we're going to chime in with Shop by Lefties, who we've talked with and had some discussions regarding their myths with the pandemic and COVID. So we're going to go ahead and chime in with Shop by Lefties at this time. And Dwayne Phelps. Take it away, Dwayne.
My name is Dwayne Phelps, aka Lefty. This is the Shop by Lefties. Here we go. Well, you know, I definitely, I know that it's real, right? I understand that it does exist. I think that it's the people that it affects everybody. The people that it's fatal, I would say, to my knowledge, we don't know their health conditions pre-existing. I personally grew up in a holistic medicine household. My mom was not only just taking the herbs, but if you got cold, it was Robitussin, it was NyQuil, it was Theraflu when that came out. We garlic, we doing vitamin A through F. You know, we doing everything. Black seed oil. So when I catch a cold, I kind of have an understanding as I became an adult and have my own children on what to give them and how much of it to give them. And I've been able to beat colds all this time. So when I get sick, I know what to do. So when COVID came out and everybody's talking about, of course you don't know, but I personally have been able to keep my family safe and others around me when they get sick. Well, you know, you hear this stuff about it affects people differently in their kidneys and lungs, and you know, you hear all the different stuff.
Hello, my name is Idasia, and I'm a hairstylist at the Shop by Lefties. That it turns people into zombies, I would say. That's a big myth. Or it's like the start of like an apocalypse, really. I don't like hearing that. That makes me nervous. But yeah.
My name is Devon Tillman. I own a training facility in Central Phoenix. It's called Trying Training Facility. When it comes to COVID, with kind of a grain of salt, so it's just cross-checking and checking facts. So I've you know, you hear all kinds of things on the internet when you're like researching, you know, about especially COVID at this point. So I haven't really heard anything that's like stuff that's like that I would consider like a myth. It's just a lot of chatter about it. But I think the biggest thing for me that sticks out is the lack of education on how much just nutrition alone does for, you know, just does for your overall health and how it can prevent, you know, bacterial disease like COVID. So I think that kind of sticks out where it's, you know, but I understand like kind of the, you know, we're in a modern medicine kind of era where, you know, it's like the safe, you know, I don't know, it's just kind of people's crutch, I think. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Ed. They call me Wavy. Been a barber for about 20 years. The vaccine will prevent you from transmitting it or getting it again. It will sterilize you, or you know, you may or may not get autism later down the road. We hear, you gotta kind of like read and do your own research. So you're gonna hear stuff from the far right and the far left. There's always gonna be conspiracy theorists out there, but you have to have the discernment to pick through the truth and put together what you know makes sense.
Wow. I mean, it's nothing different than, you know, what I've heard in the past from other people, and, you know, and in my encounters with, you know, discussions in COVID. You know, one of the biggest things that I've been experiencing is, you know, just the whole natural aspect and trying to become natural, and praying that, you know, that'll also, you know, help curb, you know, my situation so that I'm not, you know, putting my family at risk. But, you know, at this time, what we're going to do is we're going to bring in a professional that can discuss that information. We have Dr. Danielle Gilliam with us today. Dr. Gilliam is a senior medical liaison for Nova Nordisk Incorporated. She's also president of the American Diabetes Association, the Arizona Community Leadership Board health chair for Arizona State Conference, NAACP. Dr. Gilliam's areas of expertise are diabetes, obesity, and NASH. She attended Xavier University for undergrad studies in chemistry and has a master in public health and a doctorate in pharmacy, both obtained from the University of Illinois, Chicago. Dr. Gilliam, are you with us today?
I am. Thank you, Raven, for the introduction.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning.
Well, at this time, I'll give you the platform and you can go ahead and discuss with us the facts.
Absolutely. So I love when I get questions about the myths or some of the misinformation that is being put in social media and also discussed in our circles. So what I've done is I've got a little collection of slides just to share to address each one of those myths that you saw at Lefty's shop. If we could bring up those slides. Thank you. So what are some of the common myths that you heard in this particular video, the barbershop conversation at Lefty's? The first one was people with pre-existing conditions are at risk of death. Well, this is actually has some meat to it. Older adults and people of any age with underlying conditions are at higher risk of severe illness and death. But this does not exclude other individuals from being at risk. But if you currently have some chronic conditions like cardiovascular disease, excess weight, diabetes, high blood pressure, chronic kidney disease, asthma, I'm pointing these out because these are what these chronic conditions are disproportionately affected by people of color. And this does put you at an increased risk. Something else to consider is that although the risk of death or mortality, you might hear that word more often in scientific or medical circles, is low, what we've seen is that with the Delta variant, unlike what we saw in 2020, the Delta variant has increased the risk of younger, healthier children becoming seriously ill and dying from COVID. So just to say that, oh, well, healthy individuals, if they eat better and they have holistic medications, or they get physical activity, or they have great nutrition, it doesn't preclude you from being at risk. It definitely does increase your immune system, and a healthy immune system is able to combat this virus, which, if you remember, I think his name was Davon, called it a bacterial. COVID is not bacterial, it is viral. The key really to helping prevent this, irrespective of your nutrition status, is going to be to wear a mask and to, especially when you are indoors, even if you're vaccinated, and then also to wash your hands completely. And we say sing the alphabet song for the children, or for adults, we say for at least 20 seconds. That is going to be the best way to prevent, and then also keep yourself healthy and active to actually improve your gut health, which is where our immune system is. The next myth that was discussed was COVID-19 is the apocalypse. This is actually have been circulating, right? And if you come from a more religious background, you might say, "Oh yeah, I've seen this. It's the second day coming of Jesus Christ, and it's what I see now in from the judgment standpoint in the book of Revelations." And what I will share is that historically, pandemics have also caused this thought to happen. I went back in the research to see what the data supports, because I always like to speak from a data-driven aspect. And what I found was that there were actually other narratives similar to the apocalypse when the Black Death happened. Now, the Black Death was a long time ago, but some of the things that were circulating at that time was that if you got Black Death, it was because you were, sinful, or, this was God punishing you for doing things, or maybe it was put on you by witchcraft. The planets weren't aligned properly, or the air was just bad. The Spanish flu, which is 1918, that pandemic that came across and killed millions of individuals, that some of the same types of ideas were circulating, right? That if you got the flu, it was because you were a sinful individual. And actually, there was also a prophet. She called herself a prophet. She was a member of the Dutch Reformed Church. Her name was Joanna Brandt. And she prophesied the day of judgment had come because of the Spanish flu. And so we do recognize that we're still here. So that second coming of Jesus Christ hasn't happened yet, because we'd all be off in heaven right now and enjoying what it possibly I envision in my head it feels like to be in heaven. But what it really shows is that these type of pandemics, they scare us, right? Because it's an unknown. We flock to our source of spirituality or religion, and that's never a bad thing. And so we try to make correlations to make better sense of it so that we can understand it and accept it more. Now, there was also a few other ones that the gentleman presented also. This was Devon that talked about proper nutrition. And 25,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago, food be thy medicine, medicine be thy food. Hippocrates is often called the father of medicine. And he did actually say that you can heal your body from different types of herbs and nutrition. So nutrition is very important. Dr. Sebi also talks about how if nature did not make it, do not take it. That was something he was quoted saying. And so I would agree the healthier way of living is to have a more vegan lifestyle. But in our communities, sometimes that's not attainable. And so it doesn't mean that because you don't live a plant-based lifestyle, or that you maybe enjoy fast food more often or canned food more often, that it increases your risk of COVID. But what can increase your risk of COVID is what you're doing in your circles and in your environment, and when you're not protecting yourself from the mask and the washing your hands. And so I just say that what you need to know is that first, healthier dietary choices are important. They do improve your immune system. Over 80% of our immune system resides in our gut. So that tells you how important it is of what your nutrition status is. And then you also want to make sure that you can try and lower your risk improve your gut health by eating more plant-based foods and reducing high fat and high sugar foods. And then another one that came up, and I've heard this myth several times, is that well, if I get the vaccine, I'm good. I can walk around, do my thing. And so the vaccines are effective for preventing infection, serious illness, and death. However, we have seen this trend, right? And I think the current president defined it as a pandemic of the unvaccinated, that most people now, today, who are getting infected with the Delta variant are unvaccinated. The issue is that we have to really be mindful is that when we talk about the vaccines and you hear these percentages thrown out in the media, 95% effective, 94% effective. What that is showing you the efficacy rate from the outcomes, the primary outcomes of the clinical trials. The primary outcome of the clinical trials was preventing death or reducing the serious illness or hospitalizations, actually intubation via hospitalization. So when you hear that, it doesn't say that, oh, it's 95% effective from you actually catching that the COVID virus or SARS-CoV-2 virus, sorry, that's the virus, or being having mild to moderate symptoms by catching COVID. That's not what it's saying. It's saying that it's effective from hospitalization and intubation and also death. And intubation is when you get on the breathing machine. They're effective, but they are not 100%. And then also, I talked about this before, fully vaccinated people with the Delta variant will sometimes have breakthrough infections. And what the data has been supporting is that the individuals who actually do obtain Delta variant and get hospitalized, because most of the data is on hospitalizations, right? Because if you catch COVID and you don't feel well for a couple of days, more than likely, we're not getting that information unless you proactively share it, but we have the information of the people who are in the hospital, that they have a less serious illness risk than those individuals who are not vaccinated. So vaccination is important and is the number one way to help increase your health against COVID-19. And then I think this might be the last myth. I remember, it's two more, sterilization and then autism. Sterilization, very important, right? Because no one, if you're of childbearing age, wants to have to worry about this. But there is no evidence that supports the vaccines can cause fertility issues. The benefit of individuals getting these vaccines prior to FDA approval is that there's millions of individuals who've been exposed to these vaccines and they've been able to pull data. And so there's a significant portion of women who are pregnant who actually have taken the vaccine and have had no issues with their pregnancy or with birth. So that's a positive, right? And that data is out there to support it. There was also a small study that took place of 45 healthy men who received COVID-19 vaccine, the mRNA. So that's going to be Pfizer and then also the Moderna. And they looked at their sperm characteristics. And the reason they looked at these sperm characteristics is because they can tell by the way the tail of the sperm is or how it swims, whether or not it's a healthy, fertile sperm. And what they found was that in regards to things like the quality of the sperm or the movement before and after vaccinations, there was no significant changes. And so although we can look at women based off of those who have actually been pregnant and delivered, that we can say it's safe, or women who have actually had the vaccine and then actually become pregnant and deliver, we can say it's safe. Sometimes more challenging in men. And so this was actually a small study that was done to give some type of reassurance that it does not cause sterilization. Now, there is some, it's not completely a myth because there is some data to support that just having a fever can reduce the man's sperm count, right? And so fever from illness, whether it's the flu or something else that's going on in your life, it actually can reduce your sperm count. So if you actually catch the SARS-CoV, if you become infected with SARS-CoV-2 virus and get COVID-19, then is there a possibility that there's a decrease in sperm production because you have a fever? Yes, but it is not correlated to actually having COVID-19. And then I think lastly, the gentleman talked about autism. Now, I will tell you, autism and vaccinations is nothing new. So it does not surprise me that this is circulating. I will say that there is no link between receiving a vaccine and developing autism. Um, and it's important because if you think about hesitancy from taking a vaccine, I know I can raise my hand, and I don't know if anyone else in the audience can, but what I will tell you is that my children had to be vaccinated as infants. And so those vaccines were given to my children at like 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and so forth. And I'm grateful that they received it because they didn't get measles, they didn't get chicken pox, they didn't get all of these other disease states that are pretty much eradicated now because of wide vaccination and herd immunity. And so I will say that autism is an issue. It has been increasing in our society, but there's some other reasons behind why that might actually be happening. And I will tell you that in our current society, women are having children later in life. Now, here's a term I'm going to throw out to you: geriatric pregnancy. It's like, wow, what's geriatric pregnancy? Well, it's actually defined as being the age of 35 and older. And if you have if you have or you have your childbirth during that age group or older, you increase your risk of having a child with autism. And so that's something to also consider. And we talked earlier about a healthier sperm. Sometimes sperm can also not be as healthy as a man gets older. And I won't tell you what geriatric for men is, but it's actually even earlier than women. But that also can increase your risk of having a child with autism spectrum disorder based on the science that's out there. Another thing that I'll finish up by saying is that thimerosal is an active ingredient, or one of the ingredients that is actually put into vaccines as a preservative, right? Because if you have a multi-dose vial, that means multi-dose vial means you can pull out of it several times. It's not just one and throw it away. They put that thimerosal in to prevent bacteria and fungus from growing inside of it and contaminating the rest of the medication before you have to use it again for someone else. But they did several studies to show that there was no direct link between autism disorder, but the FDA, in being extremely cautious, which they are, they removed or either reduced the trace amounts of thimerosal that's in vaccines between 1999 and 2001. And so currently most vaccines don't contain this ingredient, which some activists have said is associated with an increased risk of autism. So most of these vaccines don't contain them. There is a flu vaccine that does contain it, but then there's other flu vaccines that are free from that preservative. But I will say with 100% confidence that Pfizer and Moderna vaccines do not contain that thimerosal. So the risk of autism, although you can never say never, never, it's just not there. We don't see it, at least we don't believe it's there. And I think that's it in regards to the myths. And with that being said, thank you for your time and attention. I'm going to turn it back over to our moderator, Raven. If you have any questions, comments, please put them in the chat. I will be on and I'll answer all of your information in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gilliam, for your information. It's definitely good to hear the facts, because so many of us get wrapped up in the myths, and we hear so many things and we see so many things on social media. We just don't think about, if it's, even real or not. We, after so many people start saying it, you start believing it. Just some of the myths have, definitely affected my life, in context. My stepchild is currently just been vaccinated, and it caused a riffle because my fiance is definitely not wanting or not fond of the vaccine. So it caused, some problems within our household. Mom kind of forced it, but at first she wasn't allowing us to see her. So, some of those myths and, some of those challenges that we're facing, it definitely affects, our whole families. And it's crazy that, we're having to go through this. We never thought that we would have any times where we'd be seeing anything like this. It's like going back to the Black Plague, but, there's so many challenges that people are facing right now, in their relationships because, they're being forced to stay at home for COVID, or, some people are going back to work, but now that, the second variants come back around, people are being forced to go back home. And, it's definitely putting some strain in some people's relationships. Some were already in turmoil before the pandemic started. So, it didn't help, to have to start putting more problems on top of more problems. And, people need a way to try to learn to, build better relationships so that they're not facing such challenging times. But we're going to chime back in with Shop by Lefties and see what they've got to say at this time.
Well, of course, the staying at home, the kids not being able to go to school for a semester or however long it was, that was definitely a huge transition. But ultimately, the being around your spouse all the time, that was definitely challenging, at times, because we're both so busy working. We're both working people. So it was challenging to a certain degree, but I mean, my kids are all little, so they want to play, they want to run, they want to do all these things. They couldn't do their normal stuff. So that was tough.
No, we haven't really let it affect us that much. I mean, we just keep moving and doing the best that we can to protect ourselves throughout the whole time frame. So
Currently, I'm married. Yeah, grandfather of 3 beautiful grandchildren. Definitely arguing, getting on each other's nerves. Felt like siblings again. You remember when you had your brother and sister, you arguing, no, you scoot over, no, you quit touching me, no, you touch, it's just petty. You get petty. You've been in the house. We were in the house a year. Everybody was in the house for a year. Nobody ever done that. So a lot of people got divorced. Divorces skyrocketed because traditionally a man goes to work, the woman goes to work, and then you guys meet at the house in the evening, have dinner, talk, and then, go to bed during the week. So, not really on each other's nerves every day. So now when COVID hit, you were home all day. She was home all day. You watched every Netflix movie. You watched every show. You did all the internet and everything else and played every board game you could play. You couldn't travel. You couldn't go eat. And so it definitely made or break your relationship. I think a lot of people for the first time got to see what their relationship was really made of.
So I'm not the only one that had any problems and challenges. I don't know about you guys, but those challenges sound like my household. So we'll see what the professionals have to say about it. I'm only one person and I can't speak for everybody else, but I definitely know me working from home every single day and not leaving the house and being in the house with 7 other people and 2 dogs has just been challenging. I work on the phone and it's just nonstop, so I can't imagine what other people are going through. My little life is just simple. It's just a lot of people that live in my house. So I can't, even imagine, the dynamics, people that have smaller children and things of that nature. My children are adults. So, I can tell someone to be quiet, I'm working, but, I can't imagine what it feels like to have smaller children and have to be at home and having to determine, you know, whose roles are what at this time, because, you know, everyone's home all day long. You know, nobody wants to sit at home all day and then get up and take care of the kids while they're homeschooling, then get up and cook and clean and make sure everybody's ready to get the next day started. And, you know, and there may be one other person in the household possibly that, you know, doesn't work from home, and, you know, doesn't have to go through all of that because they're not home. And, you know, having smaller children at home definitely could affect what goes on. But at this time, I'll let the professionals chime in on it. I've got, you know, Dr. Anissa Nadir that's going to come in to talk with us. She's recognized as 2021 Businesswoman of the Year by the Tempe, Arizona Chamber of Commerce. She's got a forthcoming book this fall coming up. Dr. Anissa is a retired Arizona State University social work professor where she taught 17 years. She worked over 40 years as a social worker and continues to mentor social work students. She's as the owner of Dr. Anissa Nadir and Associates LLC. Dr. Nadir provides a diversity and inclusion education and training program, development and relationship education programs. She currently serves as the president and is the co-founder of the Islamic Social Services Association, USA, a national nonprofit organization in Arizona which provides mental health education and advocacy. So without further ado, I'd like to bring Dr. Nadir on so that she can discuss with us what really is going on right now. Dr. Nadir?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am, I can. Good morning. Good morning. Well, now afternoon, our time. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Great, and we want to thank you for joining us this morning. What do you think? And, you know, what are the facts concerning the challenges and, you know, things that are going on during the pandemic and, you know, in relationships in general?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you and Erica and Dr. James for including me in this conversation. Really do appreciate this opportunity to be here with you. I just wanted to share, I think some of the issues that the gentleman in Lefty Shop shared were right on. And the reality of being home for, it's almost 2 years now, and home together in a way that we're not used to. As one of the gentlemen said, you know, we used to come, you know, both folks, because we tend to be two working people in a household now. So we tend to be able to go out, and usually we spend 8-10 hours away from home. Well, now we're home all day. We're home 24 hours. We don't have the outlets that we used to have where even if we, you know, were home, even for those folks who work from home, we might, you know, go out to the gym or, you know, Arizona, we're not able to get out in the park in the summer, but, you know, during this time we've had, you know, the cooler periods here in the Phoenix area and different parts of Arizona, and we've had the heat of Arizona. So the thing is that everything is turned upside down. This is so totally different than what most of us signed up for. You know, my area of focus tends to be on the premarital side, you know, before people get married. The book that I've written is called Before the Nikah, or Before the Marriage, you know, and one of the things I often talk about is that people spend more time planning the wedding than they do planning for a lifelong healthy marriage or a lifelong relationship, happy and healthy relationship. And so most people have chosen with thinking, well, I'm not gonna have to spend that much time with them anyway. You know, I'm gonna be at work, they're gonna be at work, you know, we'll kind of check in the evening. If we have kids, we'll see them, you know, and then I'll be able to go hang out with my guy friends or hang out with my girlfriends in between. And in the last year and a half to 2, we're not able to do that. It's totally different. And we're just not able to do some of the things that we used to do. I would also say that one of the things that's really important, and the statistics talk about this, there are two issues, and two of them have been significantly impacted during this time. And one of them is communication, and the other is finances. One of the realities that we know is that, and I think Dr. Danielle, and maybe even in Raven, in your opening remarks, you mentioned, some of the challenges with regard to the economic situation that many of us are experiencing with work. Some people having lost their job, or some people having decided to leave the job because they just couldn't manage to do both, take care of the kids at home and teach them at home and then go to work. So there was a choice that some people will feel like maybe it was not much of a choice. If daycare was utilized, now we can't utilize the daycare. So I just think that things got turned upside economically. And if before marriage, we didn't have strong financial literacy or strong financial management skills, now it's even more difficult because we likely have less money. And managing that, how do we manage some of the ups and downs? And we know that the situation with many of the moratorium when it came to our housing, that we no longer have that. We did have that for a little while in terms of those who were facing evictions and so forth, but we don't have that now. And so all of those things kind of came to, it just became exacerbated. Additionally, we have communication, which we know is another major issue. And Raven, please remind me in terms of time, because I don't want to go over time. And so the other major issue is communication. That's a top issue when it comes to marital problems. And so if we entered our relationship without strong marriage or without strong communication skills, and then we go into this lockdown in terms of the pandemic, we don't have the skills that we need to be able to communicate well with each other about some of the challenges that we're facing. And I'm going to add this in here because in the midst of all of this pandemic, not only did we have the health concerns, but we also had racial reckoning when it came to George Floyd's murder and Breonna Taylor's and all of those things that were happening. I don't know about you, but my anxiety was up with the physical health concerns and considerations, but it was also up with the watching continuous replay and being the mother of African-American Black boys and the wife of a Black man, and thinking, God, that could have been them. And then we keep going, and then it's January 6th, and I'm standing there watching the Capitol take over. So all of these things have impacted our mental health, and when our mental health is not, when we have anxiety and we're experiencing depression and other things, those things are going to impact our ability to communicate with one another. And if before we entered this relationship, we didn't have the kinds of skills in terms of relationship building and communication skills, and we had unexpressed expectations, and now we're like, I'm scared about taking this vaccine, or I'm scared that you're not taking the vaccine. How do we communicate about those things? Those are real considerations. And that's one of the things I work with. I tend to work with singles or newlyweds or people in new relationships to help them develop the kinds of skills that are really important to help them with communication, expressing their expectations and their concerns, and then being able to address kind of financial concerns, intimacy concerns, where's my love language at this point? My love language done gone to pot. I don't know where it is, because all of these things have now entered into our lives. And the other thing is, for those people who have a faith background, who are spiritual in their practices, and for them, where is that? now this, we may have had a strong background. Maybe we are exercising that, but maybe now we're feeling a bit spiritually bankrupt because now we don't know what to do. We can't even get to our spiritual centers. We can't get to our churches and our mosques and so forth. We can't, being able to go for services. We don't have that available to us either. So all of those things have, I think, impacted us and impacted us prior to our relationship. We have the increasing rate of divorce, but we also saw people getting married during COVID, and they didn't even know each other. How did they have an opportunity to develop a relationship when they couldn't spend any time together? So that is another big issue. So I don't know where we are in terms of time, Raven, but I thought those were some important opening remarks that hopefully Dr. James and I will be able to chat about a little bit more.
Yes, I appreciate you. Oh my gosh. It's been crazy, and just, I didn't even think of it from an aspect of, so many people that met people online and started relationships online and not being able to go out and have your first date and really acknowledge who that person was outside of the house. Yeah. We get wrapped up and you be all on the internet, and they come over and you guys just hanging and Netflixing and chilling. But, there's also, the outside world. So, yeah, I never even thought of it from that perspective. Ooh, I want to bring in Dr. James now. Dr. James, Dr. Edward James, is going to be one of our other facilitators tonight or today. Dr. James has a Master of Social Work in University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, a Master of Public Management at Carnegie Mellon University, and completed DSW Studies in Social Work Administration at the University of Pennsylvania. Dr. James is also certified licensed as a Master Social Worker in Arizona and Pennsylvania. He studied marriage and family therapy in Milwaukee, Chicago, and Georgetown. He's the principal consultant with Edward L. James III and Associates, an educational and consulting firm specializing in nonprofit board of directors organization management. I'd also like to note that Dr. James is a 54-year member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. As well as Dr. Gilliam, she is an AKA as well. We're not going to give her details just because she's a woman, and we don't do that. But both of these distinguished educators and, doctors are going to talk to us today, and we're going to see what they have to say. We'll let them have a conversation and see how they chime in on the subject matter. Dr. James, are you with us?
I appreciate it very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you. This is an issue that Dr. Nadir and I have talked about down through the years. Issues when it comes to relationships and the impact that it has on our community. These issues began far before what we have known concerning this pandemic. And it becomes very interesting that the public health emergency was declared by the World Health Organization in January of 2000. But it wasn't until the 11th of March of 2000 that the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 outbreak as a pandemic. Well, we know that relationships have started way before the public health pandemic, has occurred. And one of the things that Dr. Nadir has said, couples have struggled with finances, they have struggled with relationships, but they have struggled because they have had the opportunity of separating themselves, going out and doing their own thing, and then coming back, and the relationships have been able to tolerate that. But because of the pandemic and everybody being at home, couples have said, this is too much togetherness. I don't know how to handle all of these issues. And when it comes to premarital work, which is one of the areas of specialization of Dr. Nadir, the question that I have, and the question that we continue to struggle with, has to do with, how do couples intentionally choose a partner? And how has that been impacted by the pandemic? Dr. Nadir, please.
Yes. So one of the things that I think is really important, and I write about it in my book, which actually will be available for purchase next week, next Saturday. And also I teach it in my course that I've been teaching for a while by the same name, Before the Nikah. One of the things that I talk about in terms of choosing a partner has to do with knowing ourselves. I think it's really important that we spend time in introspection. Many of us get married or start a relationship and we don't know who we are. We don't really even understand and haven't taken time to assess some of the challenges that we went through growing up. And therefore we wind up with triggers in our relationships because we haven't taken the time or haven't had help. Sometimes we need help, professional help, to kind of get to the bottom of who we are. So one of the titles of my book and my course is called To Thine Own Self Be True. It comes from Shakespeare. I didn't start that. But the point of the matter is, I think it's true, is that many of us are in relationships, but we haven't taken time to get to know ourselves, and we haven't really been honest with who we are, because who wants to show people, how we look when we're angry, or how we look when when we're being selfish. I've had my selfish days and I'm ashamed of that. I didn't really want to be that way. Or who wants to tell a new partner or a prospective partner, about some of the ugly side of growing up. I know myself, my parents had lots of challenges when I was growing up, and I moved around from different schools. I'm very grateful for the outcome, but my brothers and I experienced quite a difficult childhood because of the challenges that my parents faced. But who wants to talk about that? Who even wants to acknowledge it? Who wants to acknowledge it? So I think that those things are really important when it comes to choosing wisely, and then also taking time to really get to know. And I say no, K-N-O-W, capital K-N-O-W, not the small, she's cute, or yeah, he's handsome, oh, it was so nice to see them, so-and-so, at services, or, they go to services regularly. The pastor said so, or the imam said, yeah, they're at the mosque regularly. That's nice, but who really are they? Mm-hmm. And do we take time to do that? And so I'm just a real advocate of really taking time to ask some of the hard questions, and getting professional assistance, participating in marriage preparation and premarital education and counseling to really get at, really who we are and are we compatible for one another. And so then we come into the pandemic and none of that work's been done.
Well, it becomes very interesting that we need to be able to ask the question, as we are talking about finances, as we're talking about intimacy, as we're talking about past relationships, as we're talking about children, as we're talking about, where is it that we worship, and talking about in-laws. How much do you think that has been impacted by the sense of togetherness of the pandemic?
Hugely. This is huge because, the support systems that we had to even help us get through, we often remind ourselves that it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a village to help us develop a healthy relationship and a healthy marital situation. Well, those support systems during the pandemic, we cared about each other, but we weren't able to be with one another. For those who I mean, I know I had to learn how to use Zoom, and then there was WebEx, and there was something else, and I had to learn how to. Oh wait, I had to get on WhatsApp, because if I wanted to be able to stay in touch and see my grandchildren, I had to get on WhatsApp. We were fortunate that around August, so in February, it was really kind of traumatic for my family, because my youngest son had had a stroke. And we learned later that it was probably related to COVID. Thank God he recovered from it. But my daughter-in-law and my son, they had 2 children. It was hard because we couldn't leave Arizona to go to them in California. Because now we got locked down. We can't get on the planes the way we used to. Do we want to get on the planes the way we used to? So how do we support them? It wasn't until August that we finally felt like we could, put the double mask on, and thank God we didn't have a person sitting in the middle. And then we took off to California after taking our COVID vaccinations and getting our doing all the things that we needed to do to prepare to go there. And then we stayed there for like some time just to be able to help out. But how many people have that? How many people could afford to do that? And how many people were able to actually do that, so you can be in the presence of the people who normally support you?
Well, it becomes very interesting that we do pay attention to others. We pay attention to family. We pay attention to those members within our faith-based community. We pay attention to our neighbors. But I have seen that what's lacking is our ability to self-care.
Absolutely.
Our ability to say, it's important for me.
Yeah.
Our ability to say, yes, I'm going to be selfish right now because I need to be able to do that. And in a lot of my conversations with couples, I talk a lot about self-care. I talk a lot about, what do you do for you today? And inevitably, the conversation goes, well, I'm helping this person, I'm helping this person, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But again, I need to circle back and I need to reframe the question, what are you doing for you? So I think that it's so tremendously important that in this pandemic, and eventually we're going to come out of this pandemic, our lives are changing dramatically. But unless we pay attention to us, then it's going to be tremendously difficult. For those of us who have flown in airplanes, and if we have paid attention to the flight crew,
put your mask on.
At some point, they're going to say, put your mask on first. So when I do consultation with organizations centered around compassionate fatigue and self-care, I'm talking about put your mask on first. And it's amazing to me how many individuals do not understand the concept or who refuse to understand the concept. What's been your experience?
Well, I think you're so right. Most of us, and many of us, we're kind of self-sacrificing in a lot of ways. And I'm going to say a lot of us women, we've kind of grown up taking care of others, taking care of, our parents, taking care of our siblings, taking care of our spouse, taking care of our kids. I've done presentations where many of the women even said they didn't even know who they were anymore, because that was so difficult for them. And so I think that self-care is extremely important. But in the pandemic, it was hard because remember, let's say, for instance, the thing we loved to do was to dance or to work out by Zumba. Couldn't go to the gym. Gym's closed, right? Let's say that the thing we like to do was maybe to get out. We could go walk in the maybe the neighborhood perhaps, but who's going to watch the kids? Do we have that worked out? Maybe we're not quite used to that, especially if your spouse or significant other had to get on their computer early to start work. No. So now they can't watch the kids because they're at work. They're at home, but they're at work. And so I think all of those things, there's been some, and we know that a lot of people wind up, I heard in the discussion earlier about Netflix, we Netflixed and, basically we became couch potatoes. So we weren't working out. And so our hearts were gaining our bodies were gaining weight during this time, and we weren't having the ways that we needed to physically, mentally, or spiritually or emotionally work that off. And so, yeah, I do agree that self-care is really important, but I do think that the pandemic has made it really difficult for us to focus on ourselves during that time.
And it's difficult for us to focus on ourselves. And when it comes to healthy relationships that we're going to be talking about in just a few minutes, I believe that our families have a responsibility to help us, to remind us, you need to go do you, and be okay with that. And be okay with that. But unless families are willing to do that, unless couples are willing to do that, partners are willing to do that, then certainly it's going to go by the wayside. In your preparing couples for marriage, and I know that you spend a lot of time helping them to have these types of conversations, what's been the greatest challenge that you've seen recently concerning COVID-19 when it comes to communication?
I don't think it's really changed, Dr. James. I think it's the same situation. If I think the challenge is learning how to communicate in a respectful way, learning how to communicate in a compassionate way, learning how to reflectively communicate. I express emotion. Many of us don't have even feelings language. We have just a very few words in our feelings vocabulary, happy, mad, sad, and glad. And we don't have the language really to be able to say, I'm worried. I'm scared. I feel scared when I hear all of this, all of these different myths and the things that are coming at me, or I feel worried that we're not going to be able to manage coming out of COVID. We don't have, as for the most part, this language. I didn't grow up with that language. It was something that I learned, as I became a professional and became more involved in helping individuals and couples kind of address some of these things. But most of us don't have that language. And so I think that I don't think it's different. I think it's compounded. I think that the issues related to communication and being able to care for one another and express our concerns is compounded by the fact that now we are here. If we had learned some of these skills before lockdown, perhaps when we went to lockdown, we could have kind of pulled some of this off, reminded each other, take a time out. We're having a conflict. We don't have a lot of space, but we can, go outside, maybe go in the backyard, go in a separate room, just take a few moments, maybe just kind of jump in place and kind of, let some of that go to pray. We could remind ourselves. But when we went to lockdown and we didn't have any of these skills in place, I think it just got exacerbated.
Well, it's very interesting that my fiance keeps talking about time out. And couples need to learn how to legitimately take that time out. Maybe you need to have a few moments.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to have several moments before you can come back and have that conversation. One other thing before we wrap up this session, this segment, it's important that couples understand not only their love language, but what's called their love maps. Emotionally, who are they? Emotionally, what are those issues? What are those emotional triggers? And certainly how to talk about those issues. I'm going to be talking about healthy relationships in just a few minutes, and there's a philosophy that I have been following over the last several months by the Gottman Institute that talks about the soundness of a house. And one of the features of that is building that love map. The love map has to do with the love language, yes, but emotionally, who is this person that we are with?
Yeah, I think that that's going to be very interesting. I'm so glad you're going to be talking about that. One of the things that, or the areas that we've started to focus in more in our work is the ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences. And I think the adverse childhood experiences and know where we fall on that, it helps us with our map. And mapping and looking at kind of what were some of the things that went on as we were growing up and how they triggered us and how that has impacted who we've become. So I'm looking forward to that discussion.
And when it comes to the ACEs, and when it comes to the love map, and when it comes to this whole COVID-19 issue, and I know that this is an issue for another conversation, but there are some cultural issues that absolutely have to be taken into consideration. And we were talking about culture, it's not just race and ethnicity, but there are ways of life that individuals have. There's language, there are values that are built into their culture. So I don't believe that we can generically talk about COVID-19 and relationships. But once again, this is another conversation. We need to be able to talk about the implications from a cultural perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Raven, back to you.
Great information, you all. I'm just sitting here stunned because you just don't think about a lot of things. You don't think, especially during COVID times, a lot of people haven't thought, into what people's, values are and, who they are as a person. I know personally myself, during this pandemic, I've had a whole lot of time to think about who I am, and what I want out of life, because it seemed like the end of the world for me. And I'm sure that a lot of other people felt that way. We've never had a situation, not in my lifetime, where I've been this uncomfortable. And being uncomfortable in my own skin has definitely caused a ripple in my relationship. And I'm sure other people's relationships, a lot of people found themselves during the pandemic. And I think that, also could have been, and I'm no professional, but I'm sure that could have been, some of the reason why some of these people were getting divorces during that transition, because, you had time to sit and realize who you were actually with. You guys said, we spend so much time away from home, working prior to, this pandemic, that we don't spend much time with our mates. On average, I'm spending 8 to 10 hours at work. I'm sleeping 8 hours. So that doesn't leave much time for my, spouse or significant other. So, I'm sure that, during this process and, during this pandemic, a lot of people have, had a whole lot of time to sit and, really tune in to who their partners are, some good, some bad. But, after listening to you guys, I do acknowledge that, there's been a lot of people that have, had some good experiences, throughout this process, because, they were able to, figure out who each other were. It was a lot of time, a lot of downtime, and a lot of sitting on the couch, being couch bunnies. So I definitely agree with you all there. I think that another thing that we definitely need to get back to is how we build these healthy relationships, how we maintain these healthy relationships. I know you guys brought up, the love languages. I don't think that a lot of people acknowledge, what a love language is, or even know that exists. I didn't, find out about love languages until about 3 or 4 years ago. And when I read the book, it was just like an aha moment, just figuring out, what it was that I wanted, in comparison to who my partner was, and what he wanted. So, if, anybody tuning in has not, read the love languages, I definitely would recommend all of the books. I even purchased the one for the children, and it just made so much sense. When you understand your mate, and when you understand what it is that they really want, where they've been, it gives you, a better perspective on how to build with that person. Which brings us into the next set of videos. We're going to tune into lefties and see what they have to say regarding how to maintain healthy relationships. That's something we definitely got to make sure that we're doing during this time frame so that we can maintain our households. So, when you're running on fumes, you're not much help to the other person. So let's chime in with lefties and see what they have to say about how to maintain healthy relationships.
How do you keep a relationship healthy? Man, I don't know if I'm the right person for this type of question. I mean, I try my hardest. Communication's always key. Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Communication, and I mean, we just happen to kind of have a lot of the same interests, so it kind of, works out. But
How do I see a healthy relationship? Communication for sure. Communication and gratitude. I think that gratitude is the catalyst for all peace in life, because no matter what you do, no matter what mile you walk in, your mile is no longer than my mile. The only difference is how I look at making that walk. If I'm thankful for every step, thankful the sun is up, or thankful for whatever path, even thankful for the rain that's coming down, if I find appreciation in everything that I'm doing, then I don't have the nothing in me to allow myself to go to a dark place or to a down place or to a depressed place, because I got gratitude. I'm thankful. I could be sitting in jail. I'm alive, for one. I know this ain't gonna last forever, for two. And for three, let me contemplate what I'm gonna do when I get out of here to put myself back in the situation, or to be better than I was before I got here. So once you start allowing gratitude to be the focus of everything you do, then you can't go to a bad place, even with COVID. I'm thankful that I personally, or none of my close friends or family have passed away from it. I'm thankful that my business is able to stay open, or the list goes on and on and on. So I try to allow gratitude to be the number one thing that when I get enticed about with my spouse and we going back and forth, I try to say let's let gratitude be the first thing we talk about, and then whatever issue we're having, now let's bring it in. Because if we spend more time focused on what we're thankful for, whatever issue we're having shrinks, in my opinion.
Definitely, I have all different types of age groups in my household. So there's definitely been conversation about how certain people feel about it. But everybody overall does respect everybody else's decision. We do take each other's thoughts into consideration because we do all live with each other, and like I said, it's a wide variety of ages that I live with, young and old. So yeah, it does stir up some conversation, but it doesn't make us feel like one another is wrong or something like that.
I'm married. Yeah, grandfather of 3 beautiful grandchildren. A healthy relationship is where you come home and you allow each other to be who you are that day, forgiving and forgetting. I had to learn how to it's okay to have a bad day or disagreement or an argument, and then tomorrow wake up and it's a brand new day. Okay? When I learned how to do that, my stress level went, you know what I mean? And it's just respecting one another, treating each other like you want to be treated, Selfishness kills any relationship. 2 things, selfishness and lack of communication, and then lack of comprehension. Now you can communicate, but if you don't understand why the other person feels like this, then you'll continue to do whatever they, and that falls into selfishness. So it's all those 3 things.
think that the consensus in that video was communication. Every person that had something to say at Lefties mentioned communication and how we communicate and how we comprehend that level of communication, which goes back to, you know, the book, The 5 Love Languages, that Dr. Nadir and Dr. James were discussing. You know, being selfless is definitely something that we need to practice, especially, you know, because we're with each other so much and so frequently right now. You know, and in life in general, we need to learn to be selfless and appreciate, you know, as one of them stated, we need to be appreciative of things that we have and have gratitude, as Lefty stated. You know, having gratitude and being thankful for the things that you have on a daily basis seems, you know, to help me as well through a lot of turmoil. Because as you're you know, forgiving and forgetting, it allows you to wake up the next day with a new start. Dr. Nadir and Dr. James, what do you guys have to say about this?
Well, as was said before, absolutely, communication is just key. Healthy communication, and this goes back to premarital work. And Dr. Nadir has seen a lot of this, but I really believe that healthy communication, emotional awareness, and some good old-fashioned hard work can really stop some issues before they start. And we need to help couples that are contemplating marriage to learn how to communicate with each other. Strong communication is absolutely critical for a successful relationship. Dr. Nadir, you know, what have you seen that couples are coming to you saying that there are challenges with communication? In other words, where are they learning that there are these challenges?
So in my experience, what I've seen is that folks are modeling communication behaviors that they saw growing up. So they saw how their parents communicated with one another, the people close to them in life, you know, whether or not they had more of a argumentative style, or maybe they were very passive and didn't say anything, or they just walked off. I'm not going to talk about it, you know. So or whether they saw them sitting down, you know, as you said, maybe taking a time out if it was maybe a more challenging conversation, and then spending some time, you know, on their own, maybe praying about it, and then agreeing to come back and spend some time together. So, but again, this isn't something most of us have been taught. It is something that we can learn, but it is not something that most of us have been taught or taken the time to learn. So, yeah.
Do you believe that there are gender issues when it comes to communication?
I think there are gender differences when it comes to communication. So as men, men communicate differently from women. I know many of us, and certainly this is not all of us, but we don't want to put this to rest until we get it all taken care of, you know. And whereas oftentimes men is like, I'm done, that's it, you know, and then that's it. So we do have different styles of communication, but I think, you know, beforehand, you know, and again, in the premarital phase or the pre-relationship phase, I think it's important to identify our communication styles, because then you want to see if his or her communication style is compatible with yours. You know, if someone has grown up in a household and they, you know, that's what they're used to. They're used to arguing, or they're used to even playing the dozens with one another. You know, that's how they do, you know, humor is how they communicate. And if that's compatible with yours, that's good. But if it's not, then that could be very challenging in your communication, in your relationship. And now in lockdown, now you got to deal with it, you know, and it's not what you had expected. Normally, even if you had a communication challenge, in a non-COVID, non-pandemic time, he was like, okay, let's just leave this. You know, we're going to work for 8 hours. I don't have to deal with this right now. And as you said, when we come back, you know, we have a couple of minutes together. Maybe we deflect and spend time with the kids or watch a program, and we don't ever have to really deal with it until there's a crisis. I think I mentioned earlier, I'm very much prevention oriented. I'm not a crisis oriented person, but the reality is that you know, people do have, without those skills, that will find themselves in a crisis and not know how to handle it, not know how to communicate about it. Mm-hmm.
And because there are gender differences, there are gender styles. I was listening to a program a couple of days ago, and they described some of the distinctions between men and women. Mm-hmm. And they were describing that men, when they begin dealing with these types of issues, it is like the old card catalog system that they have in the library, that they'll pull out the drawer, and there are some very definitive issues in that drawer. They'll deal with those drawers, they'll deal with that drawer, and then they'll put it back. And then they'll go to another section, pull out another drawer, just deal with those issues, and then put it back. But they were describing that women have much more of a globalness when it comes to communication, that they can link issues, what we call synthesizing, from a couple of days ago or a couple of weeks ago, and the man is saying, where'd that come from? And I do believe that when we begin thinking about and asking couples as they are preparing for a life together about their communication styles and what is it that they can appreciate from their partner concerning those styles, those are questions that need to be raised. And if we don't raise those questions with these couples that are preparing for a life together, sooner or later, the issues are going to come up.
Yeah.
I too work from very much of a preventative framework. If we can help individuals to understand that there are issues that may come up in the future, well, let's begin to strategize. Okay, so how are we going to handle those? And when it comes to conflict, you know, conflict is going to happen in normal circumstances and as well as in abnormal circumstances. But knowing how to handle those conflicts is the key, as opposed to just simply saying, well, they're there. But we also need to know how to move conflicts forward, even if it creates issues and concerns. Cannot ignore those conflicts.
That's right.
You and I in the past have talked about conflicts that are solvable. And these, you know, these are fairly straightforward. You got it, you know, you got an issue. This is the solution. And as couples problem solve together, then they can get past it. But I think that there are also some perpetual conflicts. And it's important to understand that stories have meanings. And the way that individuals talk about stories have meaning. I just as an example. You may have a couple that may argue about money. So what does money mean? To one, money may mean the ability to go and spend it. For the other one, money may mean security and safety. So we talk about language, we talk about love language, we talk about the love map. It's so tremendously important from a premarital perspective to help couples to have that understanding that, conflict is going to happen, but what does it really mean? And to have the ability to ask the question and just allowing the process to occur.
Yeah, I agree with you. And as you were sharing those points, I also thought about a couple of other things. And one is how we choose to communicate about certain things, like language, like you always. So not owning your feelings. So one thing is recognizing that the feelings and emotions that are coming up, but the other thing is kind of blaming the other person. And in the midst of a disagreement, we're like, you always, or you're never home, or you never come in, or you never help with the kids, or you never take out the trash, or you never, that's not helpful. That shuts down communication. So and rather than saying, I realize that, I could use some help, and I really miss the help that you're able to give. I know that you're working more hours, and it's more challenging because you're kind of doing double duty at home, working and helping to take care of the kids. But I really miss that, or choosing our battles. Sometimes we choose battles. Yes, Erica, I statements versus you statements. Yeah. I feel worried when, this is occurring. I feel sad, or I really miss the help, and that comes with also learning the feelings vocabulary. By the way, feelings vocabulary words, I think is really important. It's like building our work vocabulary. When in our work, we start to build this jargon. Well, if you go to Google and you look up feelings vocabulary, then you'll come up with a list of different vocabulary words to describe different feelings. And that really gives us more specificity when it comes to how we're feeling about different things. And I really encourage people to begin to develop a feelings vocabulary list, just like back in the day we had a spelling list and a vocabulary list. Like now learn new words. I'm feeling furious, I'm feeling enraged, I'm feeling so excited about all the things that we get to do together. And so I really do encourage, and it's available on Google. Everything's available on Google today. The other thing is that I think one of the things that we do, or that would be helpful to do, is to choose our battles. I know that I've learned over the years that certain things were not really worth fighting over, or having a big discussion about. It's just really not that important anymore, and in the video in Lefties, he talked about, I think Dwayne talked about gratitude.
Yes.
And when there are certain things, I stop and I'm better able to, as I've matured. This didn't happen all at once. It wasn't where I was as a kid, as a young married person, but as I've matured, I've been able to stop and say, is this worth it? I am so grateful that we're together, that we're healthy, that our children are healthy. This is not really worth it. It's not worth having a big old knockdown, drag out, or argument about it. And I've learned some of my triggers also. And I've started to learn why I've been triggered on certain things, because there's some things that happened when I was a kid. But again, that takes time. And I've needed to spend time with me to be able to do that. The other thing I wanted to mention is when he mentioned gratitude, I think it's healthy to have a gratitude journal. To kind of jot down daily a few things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that you're grateful for. And then for those who are people of faith and for whom prayer is part of their life, to pray about it and to indicate, that gratefulness is part of your spiritual practice.
And and being grateful and understanding gratitude is absolutely critical. But I think that this is something that we need to teach and instruct others as they are preparing for a life together. Because many times, as you had said, they aren't learning this from their family of origins.
Yeah.
So we really have an obligation. One other issue. I really believe that in order for couples to sustain relationships, and especially in this very difficult time, they have to have fun.
Absolutely.
And sometimes we need to help couples to understand how to have fun. I've talked a lot about prioritizing joy and asking the question, what brings you joy? And it's amazing when I have that conversation with others, I get this blank stare. What about, joy? And they talk about joy with other individuals, but I'm saying, what brings you joy? And in this tremendous era of this pandemic, it may be challenging for individuals to think about joy, but to also to practice joy. We need to find some way of putting joy back into our relationships and make it a priority. I think that how do we begin to fix that? Don't wait for weekends or vacations to have joy or to have fun. I think that it's tremendously important to be creative. Finding amusement parks, date nights. My fiance and I, went on a date night last night. We went putt-putt golfing in a place where you put goggles on and it's 3D and it's crazy. But to have date nights, to walk in the park together.
Which is something we can do in the pandemic, right? And without a mask, you can go outside, and it's getting cooler in the evenings. We can do that, yeah, or early mornings, yeah.
Absolutely. But as we are about to run out of time, there are four definitive things that I want us to be able to consider when it comes to the healthiness of relationships. Men need to have a safe space to express vulnerability. And that safe space comes in the form of their relationship with the partners. Secondly, I think that it's tremendously important that there is honesty with your partner concerning your needs, your emotional needs, your physical needs, your sexual needs, your health needs, whatever those needs are. And unless we have that honesty with our partners, then again, it goes by the wayside. Thirdly, I think that it's tremendously important that we respect each other's skills. Each one of us brings skills to the table. And to be able to respect what those skills are, acknowledging those skills. I have learned so much from my fiance because I have very consciously, and I've had to have some help to do this. This simply didn't come out of my brain. I've had to have some help to do this, but to be able to respect what she brings to the table. And lastly, gosh, marriage is for every day. It's not just holidays, it's not just anniversaries, it's not just birthdays, but marriage is every single day. And there may be times that couples have differences. Times that couples don't see the same direction. But that's all about marriage. And lastly, gosh, there is a difference between marriage and having a ceremony.
Mm,
Marriage is for life.
mm,
And all of the emotional issues that are centered around marriage.
mm.
The marriage ceremony is just a period of time, maybe an hour and a half, whatever that may be. That's an event.
Mhm.
I want couples to understand that the marriage has to do with the relationship,
Mhm.
and it's hard. It's tough.
It's hard. It's work.
It's work, and we need to continuously work on our marriages, work on our relationships, because in this pandemic, we are faced with tremendous challenges that I have not seen as a professional.
Mm.
Divorces are high, but it's also absolutely critical that we understand that not everything has gone wrong. There have been some statistics that have suggested that relationships have gotten better as a result of the pandemic, because couples have been able to come together. There's one study that came out of Financial Online that asked the question how the pandemic affected married couples. And this study said that 58% married couples thought that as a result of the COVID-19, it made them appreciate their partners more.
Mm. Mm.
And that same study said that 50% of married couples said the pandemic increased their communication.
Mm. Their time together. They have more time together. If they had any skills, then they had more time together. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can share some things if you'd like. I mean,
Yes.
I mean, so for us, I'm really grateful. My husband, over our married life, has pretty much worked 2 jobs, and so we didn't have much time together. And then so early on, I was taking care of the kids, and then I went back to school, graduate school, and so forth, and then started work and whatnot. But this last 2 years, we've had more time together. During the period of fasting, this was like the first year we were able to spend that time together, because usually he's at work. He worked in the evenings, he was at work. We didn't get to do that together. We have more time even to have prayer together, family that prays together stays together, Well, we couldn't, because he was at work. And so we didn't have that opportunity. We just recently celebrated a marked 40 years of marriage, and we actually got to go. I mean, he planned the event, planned our anniversary time together, and I mean, it was something that I think, and I not to say that I mean, there was a lot of challenge. There are a lot of worries. We lost a cousin during this time, so things have happened. But thank you, Raven. Over that time, we were able to spend time together and be grateful that we had each other, despite all the challenges that were going on around us. And so, yeah, so I'm really grateful about that.
Excellent. I have one question for both of us, and I would encourage everyone who is on the call today to think about this. How did you get from oneness before your marriage to two-ness after the ceremony?
Well, it didn't happen right away, I have to tell you. I think for me, for us, it was a process. We had to really grow up. We had some challenges as young people, And neither one of us really saw good role models. So I think that it was challenging for us initially. We moved from New York to Arizona, and that was difficult. We wind up even getting divorced, and thank God we were able to get back together. But I think that from then, I think that for us, it was our faith. Our faith brought us together. And one of the gentlemen in the video also said that similar interests. So the things that we have that are similar interests, that brings us together. And as I said, our faith brings us together. But also, my love language is words of affirmation. So my husband knows that. I mean, at one point it was really strongly quality time too, but I realized because we didn't have much time together. But one of the things we've come to realize is there are aspects about each other that we value, and that brings us together. So I was Anissa, and I'm still Anissa. I still am Anissa, and I have my voice and I do my thing. And he values the work that I do and what I do, both as a professional, but also in our household. And then he has his things that he likes to do, and I try to, enjoy those. I work to enjoy those things together, even though they may be different from what I'm used to, or maybe what I'm like, what's my thing, but that's okay because we care about each other. And I think also sharing appreciation, being able to say thank you for taking on that, for looking up those kinds of things and spending time on that. I really appreciate it. I don't think we say to one another that we appreciate each other enough.
Excellent, excellent. And my very last question, what strategies have you employed in your marriage to make deposits in the emotional and the relational bank?
Well, appreciating one another, demonstrating appreciation. For us, again, faith is big, praying together, and even when there are times when we're like getting on each other's nerves, but, really asking for help to get through those difficult times, and communicating, like, okay, stop. Let's take some time out. Let's talk about this. I think those are some of the really important things that we get to do, and that we think are important to do.
Because I really do believe that we need to continuously make those deposits into our emotional or relational bank.
Yeah.
Because life sometimes throws us some curves.
Definitely curveballs.
And unless there is that opportunity to go into our bank and pull something out that we have banked, then we find ourselves with an empty tank.
Absolutely. Oh,
outstanding.
Indeed.
Outstanding.
Thank you.
I have really appreciated our relationships down through the years. You and I met early 2000s, I think that it was, over on the Tempe campus. So we were both on faculty with the School of Social Work in West Hall or East Hall or whatever that was.
West Hall back then.
I don't even know whether West Hall still exists, but down through the years, I have valued and I have appreciated our professional relationship.
Thank you, Sam. I agree, and I appreciate your as well.
Thank you. Raven, back to you.
Thank you guys so much for that conversation. I was over here just writing down everything that I could. It was very, very informative. I did have a question for you, Dr. Nadir.
Oh.
How did you mentioned that your husband works a lot. How did you compromise your love language to benefit the relationship? How are you working through that? That's one of my issues that I'm having is mine works 2 jobs. I work a job, I have multiple other things that I do, so we don't have a lot of time. But how did you work through that, and how did you compromise that? Because that's one of my love languages, and that's one of my biggest issues that I'm having and having to deal with, is because it's like, okay, at first we were just kind of all here, and now that we're out and back to, you know, somewhat of normalcy, it just seems that we don't have any time for each other, which was the case before the COVID. How do you work through that?
So one is starting to have a conversation about it. You know, we can't assume that the other person really knows how important that is to us. So we really do need to let the other person know how important it is. So we did that. One of the things I recognize is that he was working to be able to provide income for our household. So so he couldn't be there. You know, that was, and I was working too. But when we did have time, we made that quality time. You know, so we might not have a lot of time, but when we do have time, we really spend that, enjoy that time together. So that might mean putting away technology. That might mean so that you can, or I mean, it may be something that you want to do together. You know, it may be a movie, but it may also be just sitting with each other, having dinner together, just talking with each other, you know, scheduling time. That's the other thing. We have to schedule time sometimes. And people say, oh, who's that? That's so not spontaneous. Well, it's either that or get no time, you know? So put that big heart on your calendar, and that's our time. That's the time that we're spending together. And it may be once a week. It may be then, you know, and it may not be the like big old special time. Maybe it's just small time for us to talk. And then the big old special time might be a once a month or once every other week time where you know, get to go out. If you said, oh, your children are older, so they can take care of themselves. So, you know, you all can schedule time to do some things together. You know, people who have younger children and they don't have childcare, they find that much more difficult. And that was the case for us when we moved out to Arizona and our kids were younger. That was more difficult. But as they got older and they could take care of themselves, you know, so now we can do a few more things together, just the two of us. And I think that having that conversation and getting out that calendar and scheduling some time, but also letting your husband know how important this is to you, using that love language, using that feelings vocabulary, you know, might really be helpful.
Well, I thank you for that information. You know, I've just been sitting here, you know, jotting down some questions. I don't know if anyone else has any questions, but I definitely do. I've been in a relationship for 4 years. And so we're kind of at that, you know, point where, okay, it's time, you know, COVID kind of threw a loop for us, but, you know, it's that time. And, you know, since COVID, it's like I've seen a different person. Because we've had a lot of time together. So it's definitely been some difficult times and, you know, some great times as well. But I've had so many fears going in to this process, just based off of what I've experienced during COVID, you know, just questioning myself, you know, is this the right person for you? You know, are your values aligned? Things of that nature. You know, did you have fears? Both you and Dr. James can, you know, both chime on this. Did you have fears coming into your marriage, or?
Oh yes. Now we met 44 years ago. Yes, we had fears. And he asked me and I said, I don't think so. I don't think I could do that. And it was not based upon him. It was based upon what I saw my parents go through. And I was like, ooh, I don't know. I don't think so. But he convinced me. So, and we did have some challenges. And as I mentioned earlier, when our challenges were very difficult, moving out here from New York to Arizona, and the stressors that go with that. And we wind up actually divorcing. And then, you know, we were grateful, though, that we were able to reconcile and to come back together. But that took maturity and growing up. So, yeah, we did have some challenges. Yeah.
And certainly in my previous relationships, I have had tremendous fears, but I didn't recognize the fears. I didn't give myself permission to recognize the fears. But one of the things that my fiance, and I have been doing for the last several months is going through some premarital counseling that has really helped us to have clarity about not only who we are as a couple, but who we are as individuals, what we bring to the table. And I would really encourage anyone who is contemplating a permanent relationship to seek out someone that can help you to walk through some of these issues and concerns. Marriage, relationships, there's too important to half step, and understanding who we are. Uh, there were really three very defined criterias that we were looking for someone to walk us through this process. One, they had to be a marriage and family therapist that had some experience. I was particularly looking for a clinical supervisor from the American Association of Marriage and Family Therapy, which is one of my professional associations. Second criteria, this person had to be faith-based, that would walk us through and help us to have greater understanding about our faith. And the third criteria that was important for us, that they needed to be Black. So we found someone meeting those three criterias, and it's been an absolute joy to engage with this person who has walked us down the pathway. So certainly to be repetitive, I encourage individuals to seek out someone. I have also encouraged individuals, when I have been doing my private practice, on a yearly basis to go get a checkup. We go to our primary care physicians, hopefully, on a yearly basis. So go to someone on a regular basis, on a yearly basis, to have a marital checkup. It doesn't mean that anything's wrong. When you go to your primary care physician, you say, well, I'm fine. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Now that was definitely some good information. I'll give you that, Dr. James, because I never even thought of it from that perspective. You know, I think of marital counseling as, okay, either you're getting married and you're going through your marital counseling for the church, or you're going to marital counseling because there's a problem. But I never even, thought, going to seek professional help and just having, that listening ear could benefit. So I'm definitely going to look into that, especially because a professional is telling me that they seek professional help. Mm-hmm. So, it's definitely something that needs to be done. And, I think that it'll definitely open up, some of our communication levels as well. So I'm very appreciative of that information from you both. I do have some questions from our audience. One question in particular looks like it says, what's your advice on finding love during COVID?
So, may I, Dr. James?
Please.
So, I think, this has been a very difficult time. I think a lot of singles, there are single people amongst us, and being single during COVID is really hard. Being all alone, people are feeling very lonely. And so I do encourage people to seek perspective, a perspective mate, someone who that they can begin to discuss the possibility of having a lifelong relationship with. But I would encourage people to not go very quickly, because how we are during COVID is not how we're going to be, how we were before COVID or how we will be after COVID. How we are in lockdown is not who we are, when we are able to get out and go visit our friends. For instance, if you're a very extroverted kind of person, you like to go out And right now you're at home. You can't, or let's say, you know, I know things are starting to open up more and maybe more of us are going out. But let's say, you know, you're the kind of person who tends to really like to go out, but this period of time, you weren't able to go out. You're a different person. That's a different person. So I also really believe in, and I think I mentioned earlier, the importance of really getting to know one another. So we need to spend time really getting to know that person, you know, as someone who is how they are during lockdown, how they are at home, how they are with their finances, how they are in their communication, how they are spiritually. There's so many different aspects to a person. I know a lot of people are getting married. They meet people during COVID and they get married and then they're shocked because they don't really know that person.
Who is this person?
Right.
And I would certainly echo that. It's tremendously important to develop friendship. And those that develop friendship, that friendship can filter into courtship friendship, and that can filter into marital friendship. I encourage individuals to ask themselves the question, who's your best friend? It's a very powerful question. And then some individuals say, well, I don't know. But developing that friendship, and I absolutely agree that we need to take it slow, because if the intention is lockdown, oh, I've been locked down for several months, I got to get out, I got to find somebody right now, then there is a difference between developing intimacy, emotional intimacy, developing that relationship, as opposed to being intimate. Intimate is just being sexual. But developing the relationship, that's what's going to be long lasting.
So does your spouse need to be your best friend for the relationship to last 40 years?
Yes, from my perspective.
Dr. Nadir?
I think yes, on the one hand, but I have more than one best friend. So my husband we're best friends for sure. But I have other friends, and you know, I have women friends who I talk about lots of different things, and that was really important for me. I don't think we could have lasted because he was gone. He wasn't available to me with his work schedule and all that we had going on. So for me, I feel like yes, he definitely is my best friend, but I have more than one best friend.
And certainly I have more than one best friend. I get teased sometimes that I don't have any friends at all.
I don't believe that for a second. Well, we're gonna start wrapping it up, but I do have one additional question from the audience. It states, I've been going 12 years strong, married to my husband. I believe we communicate and work well as a team. Do you have any additional suggestions as we continue to grow in our marriage? How do we keep it strong?
Strong communication, strong appreciation, and understanding of what you bring to the table. And do not be hesitant to reach out to someone that can give you some advice professionally concerning the relationship. Something that my father taught me, to surround myself with experts. So when I have a relational issue, a relational concern, I'm picking up the phone, I'm calling. And that's okay for me.
Yeah. Trusted advisors, certainly important. Strengthen your spiritual relationship with one another. I think that's really going to be a significant factor. Spend time with each other as much as you can, and make that time quality time. Yeah. Take interest in things that each other is interested in. And
you gave me a bookmark that you and I talked about a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And it's been years. And this is 10 tips to get closer as a married couple. Pray together. Set a regular date night. The third one, establish a technology-free zone. Those three, I believe, are just absolutely critical. Faith is critical. Praying together is critical. And praying together, not just at meals, but be very intentional with your prayers.
Well, it's been so much information. I hope that everybody has gained something from this conversation. I've got pages and pages of notes. So I'm going to consolidate my notes after this and definitely get me a gratitude journal. It sounds like, from both of you all, the key takeaways here are making sure that we're communicating with our spouses and our significant others, making sure we keep those lines of communication open and allowing our spouses to have that open environment to where they can feel comfortable to discuss whatever it is that's on their mind, especially in relation to me. Sounds like that's something that is a definitive. Also appreciation, being appreciative of the things that you have and showing appreciation and gratitude to move you along, seeking guidance. Because I know after this, I'm definitely going to be looking because it just makes sense. I don't know that it made sense to anyone else, but it made sense to me. I take for granted so many things, and my communication may not be the best. I may be one of those people that say you did when I'm thinking that I'm communicating properly, but now that doesn't sound like I've been doing it so well, and maybe that's why I'm getting so much backlash. So I am so appreciative of everything that you guys have stated. I also want to emphasize that, you guys spoke a lot on spending quality time together. And I want to emphasize the word quality because it's not just time. It's not just, sitting around, hey, I'm here, I'm always here. That's not a good answer because you just being there isn't being there. So we need to make sure that we're ensuring that we're spending that quality time and making those moments, even if it means, like Dr. Nadir says, that you got to set a calendar, which I wrote down as well, because I'm bad. I mean, our time schedule is completely off. So that was some really valuable information. One of the audience participants just made a statement and said, make the time to spend the time. And it just makes so much sense. So I'm so appreciative of the conversation with you guys today. I'm so appreciative of everybody that decided to join us. This again was live. It has been recorded and will be available for viewing on our YouTube page, which should be posted in the chat. If you guys have any questions, definitely don't ever hesitate to reach out to us. Again, Arizona Men's Health and Wellness Initiative has gone through a lot of transition over the years, but we're doing some great things and looking forward to doing many more great things in the community. We will have another segment next month that's coming up, and we'll also have an additional segment in November. All love on lockdown, and the next segment will be on. Or one of the segments is on, I'll let Erica, your segment, what will you be discussing in your segment? I saw that you mentioned it in the comments, so I'll let you talk about it.
Actually, we'll actually have two more additional segments. So with the second one will actually be No Child Left Behind by Dr. Gilliam. She will be actually presenting that in October. And our third one will be based on mental health. So we will have those going forward and continue to series.
Well, thank you for that information. We definitely expect to see you all. Tell a friend to tell a friend. We're always here. We're just trying to keep you all informed, while we're all in the house. So again, thank you all for your participation today.
Raven,
Yes, sir.
did Brother McLean have a closing comment?
Brother McLean, do you have a closing comment at this time?
Thank you. I was just listening and absorbing all the positive and good advice from the panelists and good questions that's being asked. What I took away from this is basically, this pandemic has been a life-changing event. I mean, on multiple levels for various people, depending on where they are in their life. And certain things stood out, especially the facts concerning the medical experts. I wouldn't seek advice from a politician in regards to a heart issue. I would go to a cardiologist. So I think that same approach needs to happen concerning the vaccine and what works best for you and your health issues, as well as communication. I think one of the community individuals at Lefties brought it up. He said not just communicating, but actively listening, understanding what that person's actually saying. And I would just say, grace and follow up, spending a lot of time with people that you love. You have that space on the normal circumstances and conditions, but stress can lead to certain things being much bigger than what they really are. So I think showing grace in that time frame and then just following up to make sure everything is okay is a good idea as well. But thank you so much to the panelists, Dr. Nadir, Dr. James, Dr. Gilliam. Raven, you did an awesome job moderating this session, and I look forward to the other sessions that you guys have planned. So thank you very much. Please visit Arizona Men's Health on the website, Thinks Educational Fund. We take donations, and all of that money goes back into the communities in which we serve, as well as other organizations that the panelists are involved in. Please visit their websites. If they could put that in the chat if it's not already there. I think the session was amazing. So thank you so much.
And Dr. Nadir, thank you, Michael. I appreciate that information. Dr. Nadir, you also have a book coming out. I want to make sure that we get you a plug for the book.
Thank you.
Can you reiterate the name of the title of the book?
Yeah, the title of the book is Before the Nikat, and Nikat just means marriage ceremony. Okay. Because I say most people spend more time planning the wedding than they do the marriage. And it is proven principles to help single Muslims choose wisely and build strong marriages. And while I focus on the Muslim community, I think they're universal principles that can benefit anyone. And it's going to be available for purchase starting next Saturday. And I put the link so that you can join us. There are 8 of us graduating from the Power Author Academy, 8 women, 8 Black women graduating and publishing our books next Saturday. So I would love to have you join us.
Awesome. I will definitely make it. And you said that the link, I see the link there. Okay, the link is in the comments. We will leave the chat open for a second so you guys can review what you need to review and get all of the details regarding the book and the YouTube. Everything is there in the chat. So again, without further ado, I really appreciate you, Dr. Nadir and Dr. James and Brother McLean and Dr. Gilliam as well. For all of you all's assistance today. Again, we'll be hearing from Dr. Gilliam again in one of the other series, and we look forward to seeing you guys at the next series.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Raven. You were amazing, Raven.
Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Dr. James. It was a pleasure being here with you all.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.